Oh yeah, always. Nothing but Rotary around here. Yeah, yeah. What is up, Rapid Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. As you can see, we just went to Cars and Coffee, and my camera died. But got a few clips on the way there. Got a few clips at Cars and Coffee. We drove the Rotary truck, my Rotary concrete truck today. Had a buddy getting ready to sell his house. Needed to fix up some stuff on his back porch. I wouldn't call myself a concrete expert, but being a reasonably, figure stuff out kind of guy, and being around farms and stuff, we had a mixer, concrete, fixed his porch right up, and I gotta unload all this extra crap. Truck sitting dirt nasty low with the concrete in the back. So anyways, I don't really know what this video is going to be called, but we're going to get a lot done because I need to get a lot done. Fuel leak has to get fixed on the RX8 ASAP because we ain't burning this car down. As much as it does get frustrating at sometimes to own an RX8, we can't burn our RX8 down. So we got to pull the upper intake manifold off, fix the fuel leak, new injector O-rings, secondary fuel rail, easy peasy. Waiting for a couple things to still come in the mail to finish up the cold air intake. That'll be done. I've also got a coolant temperature sensor and gauge coming. So we're going to do the typical kind of easy install for the coolant temperature sensor, where you just cut your radiator hose, you install the little thing with the bung on it, thread that in, run the wires. Now, this car is a race car. I'm not trying to make it a show car, not trying to make it super freaking nice, but we need it to work and be reliable. So I will be just running the gauge wires, much like I have. These wires ran right here. We're just going to run them through the door, just like that, tape them in, and run the sensor wire up to the gauges. Now, I had been using a water temperature gauge as oil temperature. It's the same sensor. It measures the same range of temperature. The only difference is what it says on the gauge. So that's what I've been using for oil temp. So I ordered an oil temp gauge to hook up to the sensor for oil temp, and a water temp gauge, which is that one, which will go to the water temp thing. So we got to replace that. That was water temp and oil pressure for the silver car in that. Excuse me. In that little cluster right there. The front bumper can go back on, finalized, once I have the stuff for the cold air intake. I'm stoked for the ducts. I think it's going to work really well. I've got tape up there to tape the ducts up. So we'll get all that stuff done, taped up here today as well. In this next little time lapse, we'll get this intake manifold off. And then I've got to crawl into the car, and I'll show it to you when I get down there in the time lapse or something. But effectively, the reverse light wires shorted, which I've been saying this in every video, so you know what's going on. But the reverse light wire is shorted out, and it shuts the car off every time. So I just need to unplug those, heat shrink them, wrap them up, plug them back in, zip tie them so they're not touching metal things that are hot, and then we're good to go. So, also, if we're really feeling frisky in this video, which it might be another video, we'll tear down this engine. So, which you guys have seen engine teardown videos on the channel as well. So, let's get cracking. Let's get this manifold off. Let's get fixing the transmission wires. Let's get all the concrete unloaded before it rains and find a place to put it in this what's becoming a mess of a shop because I'm getting busy. And, yeah, I'm stoked. The Rotary truck is exactly sick with the concrete mixer on the back. And it worked real well. So let's get to it. Alright guys, the moment of truth. We've got the new fuel injector O-rings. We've got the rail put back in. Everything's tight. Fuel lines are hooked up. We're going to power this thing on and see if we got a fuel leak. So it should prime when I turn the key. Also, the door kills me whenever it's jacked up like this. First gen doors, because they creak, they stay open. RX8 doors slam on your legs when you're least expecting it. So, get a block of wood. It's a win. I fixed the wiring under the car, so I think. So, at least that's what was visibly looking like it was wrong. So, we got that wiring repaired. Sounds like it's making fuel pressure. Let's see. Oh, it's leaking good. Everywhere. It's just spraying out of that rear one. What the heck? Alright, well I guess I'm going to take that back apart and see. I could have knocked the O-ring off and I put it in. We'll find out. Found the culprit. You can see it's a little oblong. Must have rolled when I jammed the injector up into the rail. Must have just rolled the seal off the little groove in the injector. So, all dialed now. A little RX8, tip of the trade. Flat blade screwdriver. On your fuse block, there's a tall thing up here that's unused. See it right here? Inside there's two little prongs that stick up. This is your diagnostic port for your fuel pump. If you touch those two together, you can hear the fuel pump running. No leaks. The RX8 is a returnless system. Fun fact. Now that that's done, we can put the upper intake manifold back on. And if you've never taken an upper intake manifold off on an RX8, there's coolant that runs through the throttle body, two little lines. So it's the perfect time, since we already have some coolant drained out of it, to install the next things we're working on. I've got a coolant hose fitting adapter deal. I typically don't run these, but this guy goes in your coolant hose. You can fit a little sensor in there for a coolant temperature gauge. I've also got an oil temperature gauge. And you're like, this guy doesn't make sense. Why would he buy a coolant adapter and an oil temperature gauge? Well, I've got one now that says oil temperature. You can tell not many people in this world are monitoring oil temperature because this gauge has been sitting on a shelf for a while. So we're going to install that, but we're going to use the sensor for oil temperature in this. And then I'll switch the wiring so that one reads oil temp and one reads water temp. And I have an oil pressure gauge in here that I will remove. I also ordered some T-bolt clamps to do the intake, which I had ordered some, but they were too small. So I guess make sure when you're ordering clamps, if you order them for a 3.5 inch and you have a 3.5 inch pipe, that the actual silicone coupler is closer to 4 inches, so it won't work. Kidneys. Anyways, so we get to put all this back together, put the intake on, put all the clamps on. I'm going to most likely use the upper radiator hose line right here, which I think is the proper size, 36 millimeter for that. So fortunately, I believe I have some spares over here. That might not be for, no, that's for RX8, should be. But I have some spare ones because I have a spare radiator. So I can, when I cut it, and you have to cut a section out to put this thing in. Let me just make sure this is the right size. Oh, nailed it. That, I didn't just ruin my radiator hose and miss my track day. So the track day is this weekend. It is in 5 days. We don't have a ton of stuff to necessarily get done, but stuff to get done nonetheless for this thing to be back and ripping. So with that, let's jump back to getting some work done. We'll get the gauge installed. We'll get the intake manifold back on. We'll get this thing fired up. And I'm excited to I'm just excited to rip this thing this weekend, guys. This weekend can't come soon enough. We'll get the headlights polished, and we'll go to the track, set some lap times. Alright guys, that segment of this video went a lot quicker for you. We got her done. Intake manifold is on. The air cleaner is on. We've got coolant in it. We've got power to our gauges. I went ahead and tidied up the wiring a little bit with this little loom stuff. I still need to put some double-side tape on my little gauge pod here and just stick it down. I kind of like just jam it to the base of the windshield with some double-side tape on it, and it just stays there. It's not a permanent addition, but I honestly don't mind the way it looks. So, it is what it is. It's got coolant. Everything's hooked up. It should start. So, actually, mass airflow sensor isn't hooked up. With a intake, I guess I can just show you this real quick. I made a little bracket out of the same stuff I made my ductwork out of to just hold the filter up and down. So, it's clamped into the hose clamp here and then mounted to the hood bolt. I mean, this stuff's easier to work with than metal. So why would I make something out of metal? I can just make something out of that. It's not like it's holding up the world here. This still can rattle around a little bit, but since it's held up, there's no weight. I can fit my fingers under here, which is awesome. We got our T-bolt clamps on through and through. Coolant topped off. The coolant sensor or gauge sensor thing is in the line over there. I wanted to keep it out of the way. Low traffic area, right, in a straight piece of hose. Also an easy hose to get to should I have an issue and just need to bypass it. Maybe the thing leaks, maybe the sensor leaks. We can change that in the future. Good to go. What was I doing? Plugging in the mass airflow sensor. Right there. One of the other things, guy commented on my last video, told me to put a screen or the factory screen back in there. So I did. I had to kind of cut it a little bit, but it is fit in there. It isn't going to move, and it's just jammed into this coupler. It's like right in the middle of this. So that screen is there to stabilize the air as it comes across the mass airflow sensor. So there is that. Let's see if this thing fires up. Heck, it's the first time since Steel's Gap this thing started. Sick. We're probably going to be like out of gas. 100% because we're tipped backwards. All right. Because we forever doubted that an RX8 would start, right? So I am curious. I've never seen my water temp gauge flash like that. Keep in mind, this is the old gauge. The old temp gauge is the new gauge. So I'm curious if the sender that they sent me or something, like if it shows a beep until, like a dash like that, until it gets up to a certain temperature, or what. I don't really know. Or maybe I got a bad ground or something. But I know that my signal wire is right. So we'll see if it comes up to temp. Power steering feels good. We're like super out of gas. This thing's quiet. Loud but quiet. Belt's making a little bit of noise. What's really crazy is I actually lost the adjuster screw. See that? It's gone. It's still tight, but we're gone. hear that thing stuck in air. I hope that big filter's big enough. It was the bigger one of the big ones you can get. I didn't want to get the little shorty one. I don't have the smaller one laying around here, but we went big because RX8's need a lot of air. I think the ones that come with like your AEM or whatever is bigger than that yet. We'll let the coolant bleed off. We're not going to go for a drive, but it's at least running. I mean, that should be grounded right there. Cinder wire's blue, it's plugged into the right deal. I got to trim on my zip tie bits. But I'm excited to just hear this thing run. I have a whole lot of check engine lights to clear and go drive it, so. It's always sounded pretty good. That custom Miata exhaust on this thing. So I'm gonna let this thing warm up and make sure my gauges work. Alright guys. Couldn't figure out my gauges. Water temp gauge is just beeping. The little dashes flashing back and forth. I unplugged it, plugged it into the oil temp gauge. Water temp gauge works. So I know it's not either of the gauges. It's something in my wiring. Most likely it's not the power and ground. It's probably that sensor. Reading on the Pro Sport, whatever. Gauge thing, a flashy light like that can be a bad sensor. So probably going to have to just get a new water temp sensor, even though I just bought a brand new gauge. No big deal, because that is the brand new, that's the brand new sensor that I put in there. Anyways, aside from that, car started, car runs, car got hot, i.e. not like hot as overheated, but hot as in like we warmed it up. We turned it off, letting all the coolant I spilled burn out of here. I'm amped that the air cleaner works, amped that it's revving. We're back to a running car. Time to put the front end on, put the wheels on it, change out the driver's seat, and take this thing for a track alignment. But that isn't going to be in this video. That's going to be in the next one. So with that, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope y'all are enjoying prepping this car for the track, because I'm going to enjoy driving it on the track and going fast. I do want to say the videos have been a little bit all over the place just because work, other stuff going on. It's been crazy. So we're getting there. We're going to get this done. We're going to get the seat in it this week. You'll see that video soon. We're going to go to the track. You'll see that video soon. And then I've got to tear down the engine ASAP. So, and polish my headlights. But, you know, that's optional. So see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Keep it rad. Oh, hey, look. There you are. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Did we get a bad water pump gauge or what? Hey, come here. Did we get a bad water pump sensor? Water pressure, water gauge, water temperature gauge sensor? Come here. Come on. You gotta jump. Come here. Hey, did we get a bad sensor? Yeah, we did. Thanks, laddie. Peace, guys.